in the last month, the stock's up about 25%.
A little-known stock making actual gains in November as the rest of the small-cap market dipped.
25.9% since the trade was made, and the trade was made right at the end of October.
MarketBeat's Chris Markoch dug into 6 obscure stocks the ultimate insiders are betting big on.
What we know is still the trade was big. It was in the range of $1 million to $5 million.
While some of those big bets by Congress led to some major returns, others were shut down in November, just like Capitol Hill.
And the stock is down 32.6% since October 27th.
Chris, so great to have you back on the show. November was a bit of a rough month for the stock market, but there were a few stocks out there that kind of bucked the downtrend and actually saw some big gains in November. We are looking at what insiders are doing with these trades that had some positive results at the same time the rest of the market was down pretty well. And we're looking at some of the biggest insiders out there, and that's members of Congress. Chris, you've looked at 3 stocks where members of Congress really won in November, again, while the rest of the market was down. But you also have some examples of some areas where members of Congress were looking at these smaller, little-known stocks that didn't do so well either in November, too. So 6 great stocks to look at today, plus a bonus one at the end when we get to the Bridget's Buy section. Again, I'm listening and asking questions, going to be adding one of these to Bridget's Buys at the end of this, which is my paper trading watch list. So let's go ahead and get started, Chris, with that first stock that members of Congress bought that had some really nice gains in November. And again, these are all names that really we probably have never talked about on the show before. These are those smaller, obscure names that members of Congress are trading in.
Really quickly, I'll just say, just reminding our viewers that the information we're going to be talking about right now, they can find anytime. It's a really cool tool on the MarketBeat site. If you go under market data, there's a whole section there for congressional trades, and you can just click on, in this case, we just clicked on recent trades, and then it's a stock screener, just as investors are familiar with. So you can screen for market cap size, you can screen for time period, you can screen for what the size of the trade was, and that's kind of what we did here to try to narrow the field a little bit. And so the first stock we found was LCI Industries. Ticker symbol is LCII. It's a publicly traded company. They manufacture engineered components and systems for the RV industry, also for the marine industry and the housing industry. So it's in that sector of the market that really took off in 2021 and then has been kind of really beaten down since, because these are long-term purchases, right? And once somebody buys an RV, they're probably not going to be buying another one for a while. But the market, there is some belief among analysts that this market might be coming back, and so that perhaps is a reason that's fueling interest in this. And the stock is up 25.9% since the trade was made, and the trade was made right at the end of October. So basically, in the last month, the stock's up about 25%.
Yes, but the biggest thing about this trade, this was a huge purchase by a member of Congress. Let's dive into the details of that trade a little bit, because that's what made this one stand out. Not only the gains that were made during kind of a rough month, but also how big of a purchase this was.
One of the limitations of the MarketBeat screener, and it's not really a limitation of the screener, it's just the way that these trades are reported, is they don't have to report the exact dollar amount of the trade, but they report within a range. So what we know is that on October 27th, Tony Weed, I believe it's pronounced Weed, might be Wide. He's a congressman out of the state of Wisconsin. He made a purchase between $1 million and $5 million of LCII. The trade was made, again, on October 27th. It was disclosed on November 10th, and the stock's up 25.9% since then. So again, you've been hearing some analyst chatter that suggests this might be a good time to be looking at RV stocks again after they've been beaten down for a while. Who knows?
Right. It's so interesting. We don't want to speculate about why this member of Congress might have purchased this stock at this time, but the timing worked out really well for him. Again, I think what's so interesting is this purchase was made in October, when it's not like it's RV season. Not as many people are out buying the parts for these things. Maybe they're planning ahead for the next season, but the timing of why this stock saw such a big jump in such a short window is interesting.
One thing that might have been a catalyst here, not so much for his purchase, but what's happened since his purchase, is that on October 30th, They reported earnings. They did really well on the top and bottom line. There was a beat on both the top and bottom line, and it was a beat year over year as well. So that certainly was good news for shareholders, and I believe that's probably what has seen the stock surge so much in November.
Yeah, it could be just that earnings season
Yep,
reaction to some positive news. All right, interesting, Chris. Well, again, this is an interesting first company that we have certainly never talked about on the channel before. If you've heard about it before, let us know in the comments if this is the first time. That's what this whole list of 6 stocks we're going to talk
right.
about today are little known stocks you might not have even considered before. Let's get to that second stock that has seen some big wins for one member of Congress.
This stock is LGI Homes, which may be a little bit of a surprise to investors because we're talking about the housing industry, talking about the home building industry, and that's been under pressure for the last several years. This was a purchase made by Tim Moore, a congressman from North Carolina. Again, all we know about this is the purchase was in the range of $15,000 to $50,000, and he bought the stock on October 30th. And the stock's up 23.4% since then. And to be honest, this is a head scratcher for me as well because the company reported earnings on November 4th and the results were not good. They were down sharply on earnings year over year. They were down sharply on revenue year over year. I'd have to dig back into the report to see perhaps the guidance was different. Perhaps that's why there was maybe a little bit more enthusiasm for the stock. Or it might just be one of those things where the sector is starting to look so bad it's good. But my guess would be there was guidance there that led investors to think that there's going to be better quarters coming for the company.
Yeah, interesting to see a negative earnings report here on this one and
Right.
then see the same positive results, especially during this down month for the market. Any factors to have to do with maybe some of those government decisions and at least government discussions around the housing market? President Trump spent a lot of
Yeah.
November talking about potential housing issues, bringing up some different ideas. We had a video on that earlier this week. If you
Right.
haven't watched that yet, you can go
Yeah.
back and watch that one from Tuesday. But any thoughts on whether that could be a part of this stock story at all?
My belief would be no, because I think a lot of the stuff that you're hearing right now, I think it's good that we're talking about affordability and how to perhaps changes that we could make. But right now, I think everybody's just spitballing ideas right now until something concrete's there. It's probably not worth talking about. But I think, again, as I'm digging in a little bit, I'm seeing that the company did report, actually, they did, in fact, report strong guidance. They've got an order and backlog momentum. And so that's perhaps why the stock is taking off as much as it is because investors are seeing the fact that the company's guiding for a better 2026 and a better fourth quarter in 2025. So I think that's what's going on here with the stock.
Yeah, I think before we move on to the next one, I think it's important to talk about you don't want to just copy what members of Congress are doing. You see them make this
Absolutely.
one win on this stock. That you want to look at, are there other factors that might be interesting? I think this tool on MarketBeat is a good way to get some stock ideas for companies you might
Right.
not have looked into yet, and then go from there and see if there's more to the story that would be interesting for you. I do want to look a little bit more at how big of a purchase was this by that member of Congress? And then for regular investors out there, why might you be interested in a stock like this right now?
The purchase was, again, it was in that range of 15,000 to 50,000, which means it's a fairly large trade. It's not insignificant. The reason why investors might consider getting in on this sector right now is if there's going to be a recovery in the broader economy in 2026, it's it's going to have to be led by housing. And we know that at some point in early 2026, there's going to be a new Fed chair, and we know, or at least we have a very good sense that that Fed chair is going to be more in alignment with President Trump's preference to lower interest rates. In an environment of lower interest rates, that could make the mortgage price go down and it could make housing stocks more attractive.
Interesting. All right. Well, that's another great company I've not heard of before. Let's get on to the third stock that we've seen some gains from Congress just over the last month, again, in a time period when the rest of the market was down.
So this next one, White Mountains Insurance Group, WTM, it's a pricey stock in terms of the stock price itself. So the company is a holding company for several insurance and financial services companies. So kind of think somewhat similar to some of the other big conglomerates that we know of in the US, except this company's headquartered in Bermuda. So this was a trade made in September on September 22nd, and it was disclosed on October 10th, and the stock's up 13.6% since then. So take that for what it's worth. Again, it's a fairly pricey stock. Some investors would just shy away from this just because of the actual price of the stock being over $2,000. But it doesn't have a lot of analyst coverage, but companies like this don't necessarily tend to. Nevertheless, it was a trade we looked at that, hey, it was up in a month it was down.
Yeah, and again, that's what kind of qualified this one to
Yeah,
make the list is because it had some of the biggest gains in November when the rest of the market was down pretty well.
right.
I also just thought that this one was so interesting to look at because it's not a company that you would think of buying for yourself. I don't know how you would even find this company if you're looking for it, but a member of Congress is out there
Right.
buying it. How much of a purchase was this? How large of a purchase was this?
So this was a purchase within the range. Again, it was in that range of 15,000 to 50,000. And again, he made the purchase in late September, disclosed it in early October on October 10th. We don't know the exact dollar amount or, so we can't get the number of shares and stuff like that. But the stock is up 13.6% in that time. So
Interesting company. If you are going to go, again, none of these are stock recommendations. We're not telling you to go and buy these stocks. But if you think it's worth investigating or researching a little more, this
right.
one is interesting. I'd love for you to share some research that you find on this company because we just did a quick look and it's hard to find info on it. So it's an interesting one to say the least. Now let's get on to the next three stocks that you have for us. So first we covered 3 wins that we found from members of Congress in November, but it was a rough November for a lot of investors, and that does include some members of Congress too. Next 3 stocks are some of the biggest losses we saw by members of Congress in November for these smaller companies, not the big mainstream ones, the smaller ones. What's the
Right.
first one on that list, Chris?
So the first one on the list is Alexandria Real Estate Equities, and the ticker symbol here is ARE. What I saw in the ticker was that the stock was both bought and sold. So maybe they saw the same price action that we did. And it was, again, this Michael McCall from Texas. I saw on 2 different occasions, one on October 10th. And again on October 22nd, he made purchases. One was a purchase between 15 and 50,000, and the other one was a more substantial purchase between 100,000 and 250,000. But then I also noticed on the screener that he also made a smaller sale of the stock on October 27th, but the sale was only in the range of 15 to 50,000. So it seems like he still is holding some of the stock, but he got rid of some of it. And the stock is down 32.6% since October 27th.
Yeah, that's a really big loss in a short window. And I think a lot of investors can relate to that if they're in some of these smaller cap companies, more speculative companies saw
Yeah.
some of the biggest hits in November, some down more than 50%. So for a lawmaker to be buying in such a big purchase and then to see
Yeah.
that big of a loss is interesting. Any idea, looking at the company specifics, what can be behind that loss? Anything happening in that sector or to do with their business that might have spurred that loss?
Their earnings report wasn't great. They did do well on the bottom line. They had a strong beat on the bottom line, but it looks like they missed a little bit on revenue. This is a real estate investment trust. This particular one specializes in developing and managing collaborative life science and technology campuses. So I think there's probably an appeal to some investors because of that specific niche. The attractive part of this stock is it's got a dividend yield of over 10%. So in an environment, again, where you're getting lower interest rates, you're seeing the rates on the 10-year and the, start to sink, you start seeing a yield of 10%. That's something that you might want to consider. But the only thing I can think of is that, yes, they missed a little bit on earnings, and that's probably why the stock's getting beaten down a little bit.
Yeah, we haven't covered a whole lot of REITs on this channel. We have in the past
Right.
covered a few different videos about REITs. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in real estate investing stocks or not. It's a sector that some people really like for those higher dividend yields. If you're looking for other ways to grow your dividend investments, make sure to check out our free premium article on 5 undervalued dividend stocks. You can scan the QR code or click the link to get that list of stocks totally free today on MarketBeat.com. All right, Chris, let's get on to that second stock on this part of the list, which are those big congressional buys that took a big hit in November.
Yeah, this is a name that some of our viewers may be familiar with, and it's called Newell Brands. And if you're not familiar necessarily with the company Newell Brands, you're probably familiar with some of the brands that underneath their umbrella. So they're a consumer goods company. They were formed through the merger of Newell Rubbermaid and Jarden Corporation. So again, you're talking about the Rubbermaid brand, you're talking about Sharpie, Papermate, well-known consumer brands that fall under this company's umbrella. It's been a rough few years for this company, and that's true of many consumer staples companies. The specific trade we were looking at was representative from Minnesota, Pete Stauber, made a purchase between $15,000 and $50,000 of the company's stock on October 27th. It's down 30% since that time. I believe the catalyst for that was an earnings report where they missed on the top and bottom lines. Again, this has been a beaten down sector. Newell actually was one of the companies that did pretty well in 2020 and 2021 when you had more people were working from home. They were looking to organize their homes more. And so products that come from Rubbermaid were in high demand. That demand obviously has normalized and even tapered off now. This is also a company that is in the tariff crosshairs. And I also can see on some of the things from their earnings report, they're expecting still to be having some issues from tariffs going forward.
Yeah, such an interesting company to continue to see this decline because it's been around for so long, like you said.
It's iconic,
Also
yeah.
interesting that the timing of this purchase by a lawmaker. And maybe they were hoping for a turnaround because it was down even when they purchased the stock, right?
Yeah, it was because the stock's down 64% year to date. So I could make an argument that could say it looked like it may have been finding a bottom, but then the earnings report really knocked it down another peg. But it's one of those stocks that it's probably gotten just into oversold territory. So there might be a little bit of a chance for a comeback. But it's a company that's facing a lot of headwinds in a lot of different areas. It's a shame because it's kind of a company with a lot of iconic brands, but consumer staple stocks are still under a lot of pressure right now.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're seeing that. I'm really interested to see what the data looks like for consumer spending in December. Consumer sentiment was really down in November. I think a lot of that had to do with the government shutdown. So
Right.
curious to see how the holiday shopping season, all the Black Friday shopping that happened, yesterday and over the weekend, this Thanksgiving holiday week. It'll be interesting to see if spending is up or down, and I'm sure those numbers will come in the next few weeks. And it might be good news for Newell Brands. It might not. We'll see. All right, Chris, let's get to that third company that a member of Congress bought fairly recently that had a really rough November like the rest of the market.
Yeah, so this is an ETF. It's called the YieldMax SMCI Option Income Strategy ETF. Boy, that's a mouthful. The ticker symbol is SMCY. What investors need to know about this is this is a very specialized ETF, and they have a synthetic covered call strategy. So it's a way for investors who like options trading and like using covered calls. This is an ETF that accomplishes that. But what it does do also is it amplifies your downside risk. And that may have been the case here. The specific trade we're looking at, this was Tim Moore, a representative from North Carolina, made a purchase of between $15,000 and $50,000 on August 29th. It was just closed on September 3rd. And since that time, the price of the ETF, the share price is down 36.9%. So obviously it's been a bit of a rough time. So again, I think that's one of the things is if you're getting into an ETF like this with this type of strategy, you have to be aware of the fact that there is potential for significantly higher downside risk than you might get from owning any of the individual components.
Yeah, an interesting one to look at. Again, nothing here is a buy recommendation. These are just ideas and different ways that you can turn to do some of your own research. I do some of my own research, or at least digging a little bit before we start these videos. I
Absolutely.
am looking to every week, every video we do, add something to the Bridget Spy paper trading watch list. And on the list of 6 stocks that we talked about today, I don't know if I'm too interested in any of them. I do think going through that list and going through that tool on MarketBeat, the Congressional data screener, there was a stock that came up that had some positive gains, but it was a sale from a member of Congress. And I want to talk about that as a bonus stock pick now because it's what I would like to add to Bridget's buy list. So let's talk about this gold mining stock from Canada.
Yeah, you're talking about KTO Gold. So this is a junior miner. They're From what I can tell, they haven't started mining operations yet, but they're close. Gold, I think, still has a good run going into 2026. You can pick any number of narratives for it. One of the ones that I like to go with is just the simple supply demand dynamic right now. There's a lot of demand for it, especially among central banks. There's a limited supply of it. There's only so much that we can get out of the ground. KTO Gold's trying to add to that supply, and they've got some areas that they're looking at in the United States. If this is a Canadian company, you can buy it from the Canadian exchanges, depending on the brokerage you're using in the United States. So that's something that retail investors need to be aware of. It's not listed on the NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. So this is a company you'd have to buy off the Canadian exchanges if your brokerage allows that.
Yeah, and I think this one here is important to note. It's a small company,
Yep.
super small stock. It's not something I was actively looking for. It just popped up on the screener list of what members of Congress are trading right now, and I like to see the gains happening. It's still a small enough company, but definitely a speculative play, right? Let's talk a little bit about when you're looking at any of these kind of speculative gold mining stocks. What kind of risk is also out there with them?
There's always the risk that they're not going to be able to, they're not going to be able to hit what they expect to hit. They're not going to be able to mine. The production's not going to be what you expect, or the project is going to get delayed, or there's going to be, as we've seen with some mining companies, there's accidents that happen in the mine itself. Those are all risks. But the one risk that you don't have right now is you don't have the commodity risk, because right now, as it is with oil producers, they need oil to be at a certain price to make drilling profitable. It's the same way with gold mining companies. They need the price of gold to be at a certain price to make gold mining operations profitable. And right now, certainly with gold, I believe it's over $4,100 right now. That is certainly in a range that makes it profitable for gold miners to be doing their thing.
And the outlook for gold is still pretty strong, which is why I thought this was an interesting one to add to Bridget's buy list. Again, this is a paper trading watch
Yep.
list, so I don't really have major skin in this game. This is a speculative one to add to the list, but I thought it was interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is this one that is interesting to you? You can track the progress of this one too on Bridget's buys through time to see how well it does. I do think that this list today was interesting,
Yeah.
Chris. A lot of random names that we would never have covered before. I'd love to hear from the viewers on this one. Do you like hearing these kind of obscure names, different companies to look into and research on your own, or would you rather stick to some of the main players out there too? Let me know in the comments what your preference is for these kinds of videos, or if you had fun watching this kind of wild ride of different random stocks to talk about. Thanks again for watching, everyone. As always, happy investing.